I was born in 1950. My parents came to Australia from Latvia as displaced persons, which we would call refugees or asylum seekers now, in 1949. So I was brought up in a very Latvian household. I spoke Latvian before I spoke English. I had a very protected childhood. Didn't go to other children's birthday parties, for example. Went to Latvian Saturday school when I was in my teens. And then when I went to university in 1969, I totally rejected the entire Latvian upbringing. Having grown up in Sylvania Heights, which was the southern outskirts of Sydney, where there weren't many sealed roads, actually. I then discovered other parts of Sydney, like the North Shore, Beecroft, Wahroonga, and Mosman. So, of course, this was kind of paradise compared to Sylvania Heights. We were overseas for about 14 months in 75, 76. I was selected for the Sao Paulo Biennale. So we went to Brazil, then to London. We went traveling in Soviet Latvia, Europe, and then came back and settled in Mosman and lived opposite Sirius Cove. So we looked out onto Curlew Camp, which was where Robertson Streeton painted, lived and painted, which was a very powerful experience. That's where I started working on canvas boards, because having been, with my background, for my parents, education was extremely important. So I did very well at high school and also at university, but basically I wanted to be an artist. So then in Mosman I was quite ambitious as an artist. It was the time of the return to painting internationally, and I kind of wanted to be part of it. And even though I had only a small room in the apartment to work from, I conceived this way of painting that I could produce very large-scale works, which were also very transportable, because they're all on canvas boards. You could stack them up. And in fact, I had my first international show in London at Matt's Gallery, which is still going. And I sent 2 large works by mail, and didn't have enough funds to actually attend the show. But it was a way of participating in the international art world with kind of very limited financial means, I guess. So from Mosman, I was in shows in New York, showed at the Venice Biennale, showed at Documento, and all the works were actually produced from this small room. The texts in the work weren't always there. They really only started when we moved away from Mosman to Cooma in New South Wales. And I was really triggered by the fact that I was asked to do the Founding Donors Commission at the Museum of Contemporary Art. So I had to work out a way of incorporating the names of donors into a work of art. And that's when I started to use text. Well, I think Curlew Camp in Mosman is a kind of pivotal moment in Australian art. Some of Streeton's best works are actually of Sydney Harbour, and specifically Sirius Cove. And the work that Mosman Art Gallery has now is based on one of his works from Sirius Cove. So living on Sirius Cove was very inspirational because I know you can't underestimate these moments in Australian cultural history. I mean, they seem quite minor, or they don't have a lot of gravitas about them, but then in retrospect they become important key moments. I think Arthur Streeton is one of the really great artists in Australian art. So it was very inspirational living there, and certainly kind of motivated me to try and do something myself. I mean, the title comes from two works by Robert Rauschenberg, the American artist. He basically did two paintings which are based on, well, the first painting includes kind of photo collage, kind of gestural paintwork, and then he did a second one where he tried to imitate it as closely as he could. So in a way it's a kind of one of the first works using this idea of appropriation. And I mean, appropriation gets a very bad rap even today because people think it's just copying, which it kind of is. But of course, when you do appropriate something, you want to add to it, or you want to critique what you're using, or you want to kind of do something more. It's not like trying to produce a facsimile of something. And this is kind of like a central part of my practice, really. And it's quite a powerful practice because it means that you can engage with powerful art. You don't have this idea that you have to produce everything from your own creativity, and one's own creativity is quite limited. And in fact, most creative work is based on something else. It's only that now we can call it appropriation, whereas in the past you could call it influence, or I mean, Picasso was actually a great appropriator of other art, but he was seen to be a kind of creative genius. So I'm kind of against that position because I think you can acknowledge the limitations of one's own creative genius, but nevertheless, produce something original. The big change was when Jenny and I moved from Mosman to Coomera, in kind of rural New South Wales. And I think landscape then became an important kind of influence because actually the landscape is kind of unavoidable. If you are born and bred in Sydney, you don't ever think of landscape as a potential subject. And in fact, my generation of artists thought that, landscape painters were really passé and, really boring. And that was the last thing we would want to do. But I think with Indigenous art, which is all about landscape, as that came to the fore, landscape became a viable subject. So I kind of embraced this change, and referencing, Mosman, referencing Sirius Cove, has become an important part of my practice. Being an artist is not an easy ride, and I think artists, not just myself, but all artists need all the support that they can get. So I think foundations like Balnave's foundations, that's where people can really help. And it's a great thing to be an artist. It's a great privilege, and but it's not necessarily an easy career path. And in fact, I don't really consider it as a career path. It's more like a calling, like you're kind of called to be an artist. And then you have to find a way to oh well, find a path, that allows it to happen. So I've been quite fortunate, but that's not to say there haven't been challenges. So things like the Balnaves Foundation are fantastic